All right. Hello. Welcome. Willkommen, bienvenue. Some other languages I don't know. So I'm Eric Wadara. This is going to be Funny Games, a panel about definition for and study of comic video games. I just activated this thing. I've never used it before, but please feel free to test it out now. You can apparently ask me questions as I'm speaking, and they'll pop up on my screen, which is great for everyone. I guess you just have to go to goo.goal/slide/ yeah, I have a way of pronouncing it. I'm just gonna spell it instead. I thought it was Feck the World is what I saw in that acronym. But FEK3TW will get you there. And I should remind you to please download the guidebook app because it's super useful and helps you get to here and other panels that you might enjoy. Also remind you to fill out the feedback section on the guidebook app. So you need one to do two, please. And please talk into the microphone. I'm doing that. And at the end, I will walk around with that mic that will allow you guys to talk into the microphone. It's nice for a little while, and then it's harrowing. Okay, cool. Audience tools. People are asking me questions already. Great. Am I covering frog fractions? No one knows, really, what I'm covering. Okay, cool. So yeah, definition for and study of comic video games. It's going to get slightly academic, but not totally. Remember, this is a panel where I'm going to try to explain the joke, which is probably comedic suicide, but we'll do what we can. Here we go. How do we move on this side? Next. Great. Me, I'm Eric Wadara. That's my Twitter handle. I'm pretty active on that. That's my email address. I'll have this information up later, so you don't have to copy it down right now. I have a master's in game design and development. It's not a terminal degree. I do QA at MLB. They make games, as well as the biggest game of all, baseball. I'm going to be teaching at a couple colleges in New Jersey. I made a bunch of games. This is where I plug my stuff. D-Dumb and Sideslider are available on your phones now. One is a minimalist puzzle game. The other is a math arcade game. They're not very funny. I made 10 Flights of Ballooning, Marble Madness 2, Cerny's Revenge Tournament Edition DX. That one's pretty funny. And Feed the Guy, which there's a picture of up there. It's a hot dog rolling simulator where you have to feed yourself to Guy Fieri. It's a mix of Katamari Damacy and Crazy Taxi and Guy Fieri. Great. So as a preamble, why we categorize things, right? I just want to get this out of the way to begin with. Basically, our brains want to categorize things. So don't be mad at me for saying, yay, we should have a comedy genre of video games. You know, on a higher plane, I'm like, yeah, we shouldn't categorize anything. Everyone should just be whatever they want, and all games should be anything. But our brains don't like that, and they want to put things into boxes. So I might say things that you might disagree with. I'm probably going to categorize a game or two that you have categorized differently growing up, and that's okay. I'll keep a bunch of time at the end, and you can throw tomatoes at me or ask, and we can open a dialogue, and that would be great. But yeah, categorizations also manage expectations. So you know what you're getting when you walk into John Wick, right? And if you didn't have any expectations walking into John Wick, that's awesome. Good for you, because you probably were very pleasantly surprised. But chances are you've at least, you know what's going on. You know a gun's going to be fired. You know Keanu Reeves is in it. And those help your brain be like, all right, I'm ready. Versus if you were to go to, I don't know, The Time Traveler's Wife or The Notebook, right? Those are very different expectations. And you might enjoy both of those movies equally, even though John Wick is better. Ryan Gosling, though, he's, yeah. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of psychological research about categorization. You can look it up. I don't want that to be the focus of this talk, so I just skipped that part and put it in brackets. Great, here is a definition for comic games. Comic games are those whose primary and prolonged purpose are to evoke laughter. That means that comic games don't just contain humor. It means they are humor. That is their aim, and their aim is to be funny. I'm speaking of authorial intent. The people or person who made this game intended it to be a comic game. I'm not talking about Heavy Rain clips taken out of context where, what's his name? Jason? No, not Jason. No, yeah, I mean the Jason thing was funny, but even better is Norman Jaden slipping around a fish market, right? Like, that's hilarious, but that definitely was not Quantic Dream's intent for that game. I'm talking about games that are intended to be comedic. Games have long included humor. By and large, it's a medium that usually doesn't take itself too seriously, and thus brings us to our first participation points. I have in my possession are they M points? Is that what? M points, okay. I want to call them M bucks really badly. M points. So raise your hand. One of the earliest interactive fiction games. This 1977 title might have popularized the phrase "get lamp." Zork. Zork indeed. Here we go. Oh man, that's why I talk about games. And don't throw, I mean, I can play tennis, but great. Usually the tennis ball is thrown in one direction, and you don't want it to move at all. It's just up and down. Anyway, so historical video game humor. Zork came out in 1977. And here's a portion of Zork that you can listen to me read over the Captain Falcon theme that is looping for some reason. To that music? Wow. That's a whole nother level. Great. So here, it's interactive fiction. You're just reading things, and it says "eat leaves." Or as a user, you can write the input "eat leaves," and obviously that's not something you could do, but the game allows you to do it. And it says, first taking the pile of leaves, a grating appears on the ground. I don't think that pile of leaves would agree with you. So this is a funny game. I would not categorize it as a comic game. It's one of the earliest interactive fiction games. It contains humor. The narrator often responds to the player with a sarcastic tone. But its primary motives are to make the player think, experiment, and explore a virtual world. So again, the primary motive is not to make the player laugh, although responding in a sarcastic tone might make that the primary objective more enjoyable. The same can be said of games like Portal, right? There's humor there, yes. At points the game can be very funny, but it's not a comic game though. So let's talk about some subgenres of what I would say comic games are. The first would be parodic games, and that's how I'm pronouncing that adjective. Maybe it's not right, but obviously it comes from parody. Parodic games are those that mock artistic normalities without vilifying them. And of course you see on the right the picture of Blazing Saddles, which is a parody film that mocks Western tropes and race relations, which are both hilarious. Parodic games may target works inside or out of the video games medium, and so by works I mean other games, I mean pieces of art, poems, movies, culture, general. They often wear the very garments they seek to ridicule. So let's move to the next slide. For example, there's a lot of cultural parody in games. And cultural parody seeks to provoke laughter by targeting non-games popular culture. And I'm sure you've seen this a ton of times. Some examples include You Don't Know Jack, Toe Jam and Earl, and Duke Nukem 3D. And there are at least 2 games that might be contentious as far as categorizing goes here. I'm calling all 3 of these comic games, and we'll talk about each one of them. So, up here is an example question from the trivia game, or comic trivia game, You Don't Know Jack. And it's, I mean, from the top to bottom, it's just, the point of this is to make the user laugh. Of course, there's point system, there's everything, but it starts, the question category is $5 artwork. And the question is, suppose Jackson Pollock had become a sandwich artist at Subway. What would his supervisor have noted about his performance? And there's a bunch of jokes with, well, each one of the answers is a joke, and of course, overuses the sauce squirters is the answer, and yeah. Cookie Masterson is the narrator of the You Don't Know Jack series, and I would argue that he and the writing combined really elevates this game from just a trivia game to a comic game. You're not there just to show off your smarts. You're there to be entertained, primarily. Oh, another precipitation. Great. The protagonists of Toe Jam and Earl take visual inspiration from what hip-hop duo who warned, "Don't believe the hype"? Kid and Play, good. That's good, though. That is a hip-hop duo. No, Dong. PE. All right, you ready? It's coming up and over. Oh, there we go. Assist. Kid and Play. Just kidding. It's, yeah, it's Public Enemy. Great. So let's look at, this is a picture of Public Enemy next to Toe Jam and Earl. And it's pretty blatant, you know, with the Toe Jam and Earl Flava Flav clock and their stature and everything about these characters is a cultural parody. And Travis Faz at IGN is quoted at this as saying this quote that is cut off for some reason, that Toe Jam and Earl pokes fun at the whole over-the-top appropriation of urban culture. And I would agree with Travis. This is 90s hip-hop and rap influence portrayed in a whacked-out video game. It's also what Travis goes on to describe as what would happen if aliens came down to Earth right now to see what we're like. And if anyone has ever played Toe Jam and Earl, there are a lot of wild enemies in this game, including a batch of screaming brats, like little kids that are just screaming around and annoying. There are people with shopping carts running around, and they're there. Everything kills you in this game, including these things. And it's kind of like a meta joke about Earth. It's like, here are all these annoying beings on one planet. You're aliens. Try to get the hell out. So, Toe Jam and Earl, great. Duke Nukem 3D. As you can see, this is pretty blatant cultural parody. Yes, that's a common, you can have that stature in like a pose on a game art, but like this is pretty blatant. Army of Darkness came out in 1992, which in and of itself was a comedy movie. Doom came out in 93, which arguably used Army of Darkness as an inspiration for the cover art. And then Duke Nukem 3D came out, which is pretty blatantly ripping off either or both of those things. And here's where we get contentious, because you're going to tell me that Duke Nukem 3D is a first-person shooter. And I'm going to argue that it's a comedy game first and an FPS second. Its major innovations are that the playable character talks a lot and that there are interactive environments and interactive objects within the game. All of that is to promote eliciting humor from the player. So for example, we have a list of quotes that were either inspired by or directly taken from pop culture. Like, these are the things that Duke Nukem says in the game. Hail to the king, baby. I'm the king of the world. It's time to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum. So on and so forth. And it keeps going. I like big guns and I cannot lie is one that's cut off up there. Life is like a box of ammo. I love the smell of burnt crap. And like, this is... The game innovates, you know, I'll repeat, the game innovates in that you are playing a character that's talking, but everything this character says is like a ridiculous joke. Sometimes not even funny. So for example, one of the interactable things you can do in Duke Nukem 3D, and I remember this playing it when it came out, and I was whatever age I was in 1996, younger. Too young, I think. But one of the things you can do is throw money at strippers, which brings up a weird question of like, is this funny or is it perpetuating? Is it perpetuating or is it parodying like terribly misogynistic behavior? And yeah, I can't fall on one or the other of those sides, but there is a you know, like a Pirates of the Caribbean joke and a you must be 48 pixels tall, and Pixels joke is like making fun of the construction of games, which is pretty funny. Games parodying games. Great. I'm going to take a break to look at these audience questions real quick. But seriously, butts? Comedy gold. That's a question from Anonymous. Here's the history of Tim Schafer games. Another question from Anonymous. Oh, I know. Do you feel that saying games are comedy ruins the joke? From Anonymous. Yeah, totally. It's one of the toughest things about like doing a big research project and writing like a 15 to 20 page paper about comedy. Is like, Jesus Christ, it's not funny anymore. Because you're just sitting there telling people, oh, this is funny because, this is funny because, this is funny because. And you have to be active. You can't have a passive voice. So like, yes. Do I feel that saying games are comedy ruins the joke? To a large extent, yes. Is Morgan Freeman in John Wick? Great question. I'm going to go with no. Is Morgan Freeman in John Wick? Yeah, he's not. I agree. Yeah, see? Better. I mean, it's more of a question than here's the history of Tim Schafer's games. So we've got progress as a group. We're all growing. We're growing together. I like where we're going here. Sure. Do you have a question? Yeah, for sure. I'll talk about them at the end, and. Yeah, I have some tops for sure. Do I like what? No. I liked it growing up. Yeah, I don't really care about Duke Nukem 3D anymore, but I do argue that it's a comedy game. So let's talk about games parodying games. These are games that take aim at specific games and/or ingrained genre notions. Oh, let me get back to my speaker notes, otherwise I'll forget. Examples include Leisure Suit Larry, Pissed, and Conker's Bad Fur Day. Also Surgeon Simulator. So, this was, God. Sometimes I hate marketing, but sometimes I love it. This was marketed as, quote, a 3D animated adventure game. And this is a screenshot from Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded, a game that was remastered for some reason and released in 2013. Yeah, so this is a 3D adventure game that grew out of interactive fiction in general. We saw Zork earlier, and there have been a slew of them between 1977 and 2000, or this came out before 2000, obviously, but this one grew from that. King's Quest pretty much, yeah, King's Quest was a big deal in 1983. or 1987, sorry. And Al Lowe, the creator of Leisure Suit Larry, he took a pot shot specifically at that game with Leisure Suit Larry. And why do I say it's a comic game first and an adventure game second? Because literally everything you click in Leisure Suit Larry is a joke. This is a scene where you are trying to, the puzzle doesn't start yet. You're taking, I don't know how much I can curse because I'm being recorded. You're taking a crap, right? You're pooing on this toilet, and then the toilet breaks, and all of a sudden it's spurting out stuff and water and poop. And now you're in a typical adventure game puzzle. How do I fix this? How do I, repair this? I need to find a wrench or a whatever. But like, that is not an adventure game puzzle. That's just a dirty joke. And everything you do as the user is just motivating you to get to the next joke. You're not completing a mission. You're not getting an objective. You're not saving anyone. There is no quest here at all. I don't even know what the hell the score is in the top right of this game. No clue, but it's there, which may be another joke. Great. Pissed. Pissed is a game that came out in 1996, and it is hilarious. Pissed is made by Parody Interactive. Yeah. Pissed, Parody Interactive, whose logo is a parrot wearing a Groucho Marx freaking cigar and glasses and mustache. This is excellent. This makes fun of adventure game genre, and specifically Myst, right? Like it says on the box, 4 million people have trashed the island. Now it's your turn. I'm sure they had copyright problems writing Myst on it. On the bottom, you can see that there is a coming attraction for the sequel to Pissed, Driven, which is a joke on Riven. Driven never came out, no. Probably because they spent their entire budget hiring John Goodman as the king of the island of Pissed. So if you play Pissed right now, however you want to get it, I don't think you'll be able to get a CD-ROM version of it. But yeah, John Goodman is in that game in a very real way. Yeah, direct parody of Myst, great, I said all this stuff. Okay, participate, great, here we go. The opening of Conker's Bad Fur Day takes inspiration from what 1971 decidedly unfunny Kubrick film. What do you got? A Clockwork Orange, nice, did you know that? Okay, this is gonna be rough, this is really far. All right, here we go. Oh, please don't throw it from being seated. Oh, God. That would have put me to very big shame. Okay, great. Clockwork Orange. Yeah, 1971, that movie came out. And it is not funny at all. Jeez. On the Wikipedia page, because I kind of consider that a decent source nowadays, and I also agree with this quote, the main character, Alex, is described as being a sociopathic delinquent whose interests include classical music and rape. And so you got Rare, a company who is popular for a ton of games before Banjo-Kazooie and Diddy Kong Racing. Yes, Perfect Dark, a ton of other games, but like these are games that specifically show furry animals, right? Like furry, lovable, family fun animals, and they take this weird step in their history as a game development company, and they're like, let's do Conker's Bad Fur Day. And Conker's Bad Fur Day's only innovations include excessive alcohol abuse and tortured critters, which to me makes it a comic game that primarily mocks other games within that genre, right? While you have competitors trying to make other cute, colorful, round 3D platformers, Spyro, Croc, Tack, Tie, everything you could think of, they were like, nah, let's not do that. From within the game, it makes reference to context-sensitive mechanics, meaningless quests, and more important attributes of 3D platformers. So yeah, Alex is a sociopathic delinquent. Conker is a squirrel from Diddy Kong Racing. Rare takes a shot at the genre it helped define. Simulation games. I'm just going to say a blanket simulation games is those are comic games by and large. Well, the new crop of simulation games. Early simulators like Microsoft Flight Simulator, for example, those aim to achieve realism above all else, right? And you have this new breed of simulation games that only want to make you laugh. So for example, you have Surgeon Simulator, which I'll play a little clip from. I don't think I'll play the whole thing because it's 1 full minute long. That's how you play the game. With the this is the PS4 version. You can either play with a PS4 controller or a Move controller, and you move it around, and you're performing surgery, which is extremely difficult to do in this game, and probably not at all what being a surgeon is like. Other simulator games in the same vein include Goat Simulator, Soda Drinker Pro, Cat Lateral Damage. I would put under this. As cute as that game is, I think it's primarily comic. And Shower with Your Dad Simulator 2015. Do you still shower with your dad? And these also fall into another subgenre of comedy games that we'll touch upon in a minute. As a reminder, you can ask questions and derail me by going to that link on your phones. We're running dry on questions. Job Simulator. Yeah, Job Simulator is like, what if you had to do a mundane job with a VR headset on your face, right? And then what if you sold it for like $1 billion? Didn't they sell it for like $1 billion? Alchemy Labs, they made out really well with that. Good for them. Okay, subgenre, surrealistically comic games. And this is the obviously popular and known Dream Caused by the Flight of a Bee Around a Pomegranate a Second Before Waking by Salvador Dali, right? This is an example of a surreal work that's not a game. However, most games are surreal. I'm talking about surreally comic games. Surrealist images contain an immense amount of seeming contradiction. And a lot of times contradiction in our brains is funny, right? Cards Against Humanity, a lot of times you're looking for the card that people don't expect or the card that is contrary to what would be a quote-unquote good answer, and that's what causes humor. Derives from itself a ridiculous formal justification of a hallucinatory kind. Surrealistic comic games provoke laughter by using their overall absurdity and illogical imagery as slow-burning punchlines. Some examples include all of Arcane Kids' works. If you don't know who Arcane Kids as a group is, we'll talk about one of their games here. After this panel, you should find a computer and play the rest of them. Jazz punk, I'm going to put in this category, in this subgenre of comic games. I'm also going to put Nobi Nobi Boy in here, which Yeah, it's a questionable one about like, is it comedic or is it just fantastic? I think it's a little bit of both. It's really a wild game that I think deserves, I just want people to see it more, so yeah. So here's the Arcane Kids Manifesto on their website. This is their official doctrine. Their first rule is to shut up about video games. The second is probably the most pertinent to this talk. The fastest way to the truth is a joke. Stop listening to advice, blah, 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 blah. Those are like white boxes that I put over the formalism and the puzzles because I wanted to make this family friendly. They don't like formalism or puzzles. And my favorite, which I might get engraved on my tombstone, is the last one. Make games you wish to see on the Dreamcast. That like really tells you a lot about Arcane Kids. So this 2D platformer Bobcat was created to go head-to-head against Sonic and Mario. He didn't quite catch on, but a sequel starring him surprisingly released in 2017. Oh, geez, the people I know or the people I don't. Cody. Bubsy. He's the guy. That one was too easy? You got it. That's going to roll. It's a donut shape. I know. It's a slow burn. Okay. Yeah, Bubsy. And Arcane Kids, they put out a game called Bubsy 3D. Bubsy Visits the James Turrell Retrospective. And that came out in 2013. This is a screenshot from said game. And if we take a couple, you know, like we look at this Dali poster, Jesus. Yeah, he got this screen printed on a t-shirt in '44. This painting, and then we look at this, it's like, sometimes I really like marketing. They market this as an educational exploration of the player's relationship with art. This is Bubsy in 3D saying, look, it's the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, 5905 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90036. The bottomless void that you can fall into, and there's a lot here. There's obviously the ridiculous imagery. There's the fact that you control a character who apparently still has a patent that people are using and making new games with. There are 3 different collectibles, which is a pretty obvious shot at 3D platformers in general. And yeah, this is a ridiculous formal justification of an abstract joke. This is of a hallucinatory kind. Jazzpunk in 2014 came out, and I played this game and couldn't stop thinking about surrealism, which is something that I really like surrealism. And this game is absurd at every single turn. At one point, I walked into a back alley and opened a pizza box, and there was a pizza game that I was transported to, where the terrain is a pizza texture, your weapon is a pizza slicer, there is a fake Pizza Hut, the clouds are mushrooms, and if I'm not mistaken, the enemies are some Minecraft pizza joke. Like they're creepers, but they're a pizza topping or something. There's also this other magnificent point in the game where you get a fly swatter, right? Like you walk into a room and it's filled with glass bottles and glass vases of all different shapes and sizes. And someone gives you a fly swatter and all you see is a fly running around the room or flying around the room. And as a player, it's kind of incredible for a tutorial. It's like, hey, there's a fly, you have a fly swatter, you know what to do. But then you just go around breaking glass for 10 minutes. And even better, when you get out, if you swat an NPC with your fly swatter, the NPC turns into a fly and zooms away. And this isn't something that the game like pops up and says, hey, hit the NPCs, see what happens. It's just like this discovery that's wild, absurd, and comedic. There's also an overarching spy story in the game that is ridiculous, and that's pretty funny too. This is Nobi Nobi Boy. It came out in 2009. That's Noby Noby Boy. I would definitely categorize this as a surreal game. Here's the weird thing, like it is incredibly joyful, which may not be the same thing as comedic, but in this game you control Boy, which is that snake thing. You control two sides of this worm-like creature that can eat and defecate people, places, and things. It's a little bit of a stretch, which is a good... Thank you. It is, but thank you. Yeah, it's bizarre. Come on, look at this. Yes, the same creator, yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, I'll add that to my spreadsheet. There's a spreadsheet. That game is ridiculous with the king and everything. Oh my God, yeah. Okay, another subgenre, and this one's pretty quick, is I would say that there is a whole line of comedy games that are interactively comic, right? Like they are first and foremost funny because of the way you interact with those games. They derive humor from player input, the way a player interacts with the game controller or its controls. Some examples include Quap, Octodad, Dadliest Catch, I Am Bread. I put Starwall here. I'm okay with it. You may not be. That game is hilarious. If you give a controller to someone with Starwall playing, once they start playing, they will laugh, guaranteed. And that to me is like, okay, they knew what they were doing here. And I'd also put Super Pole Riders, which kind of is unfair because Bennett Foddy gets 2 berths in this. He made Quap and Super Pole Riders. Gerp, Quap. I like Quap. 4 inputs are funnier than 1. So here's the thing, you're playing video games, right? And you probably have played a lot of them. Movement is usually a given thing, right? Like you pick up a controller, you probably know how to move. It's typically you use the analog stick or the D-pad. Now, once you make players work for it, their incompetence shines and it is hilarious. So spreading the act of running over 4 buttons instead of the usual 1 leads to fast and funny failure. And that's all I have to say about Quap. Not. Maybe 3 meters. I mean, it's a game that I grew up laughing a lot at, and my friends just laughing at. And again, I don't think the point of that game is to get far. I really don't think so. And, you know, Bennett Foddy emailed me saying that I was kind of right. He didn't totally agree, but, you know, he did. 8 arms, 1 man. Octodad. You play as an octopus who is a father and who is who is trying to avoid being exposed as being an octopus. Yeah, I really like Octodad a lot. Tactical cephalopod action. And there's a lot of heightened humor with the use of the PlayStation Move controllers because I'll use this banana as a Move controller and this as another one. Instead of just using a controller where like your inputs are mapped to buttons that are closely there, you now have to like hold triggers and go like this and pick up coffee and put it down in a way that like you would never do in real life. And because you're flailing around with the game, it really, really heightens it and just like solidifies it as, this was made as a joke. It's a well-polished, well-designed joke, but I would also say additional humor comes from the plot, the characters, and the fact that Octodad only talks in incomprehensible bubbling noises. Yeah, it was great. Okay, another easy one. This edutainment gem took the internet by storm in 2012. The sequel released in 2016 as part of another glittery game. The jig is up. Yeah. It's Frog Fractions. Great. Am I going to cover it? Yeah. Yes, and we did it. We're nice. Yeah, Frog Fractions. Special note about Frog Fractions. It is a comic game through and through. It is parodic because, no. It's surrealistic because, no. It's input funny because, I'm not going to tell you. This is a game that is heavily reliant upon the element of surprise, which is very likely a common thread in all comic games. To be surprised usually delights us as humans. Sometimes it terrifies us, sometimes it depresses us, but a lot of times, I would say, like, whatever job you work at, go in on Monday with a ridiculous haircut and see how people react. You will find that more people delight and laugh than fire you. Or maybe, but one fire is enough, right? You just get fired once. Check if 100% of audience has heard of or played Frog Fractions. I didn't do that. Who here has heard of Frog Fractions? Or has played it? Okay, great. That's close to 100%. Yeah, so I have like this long paragraph about why this game is all of these things, and right before I got here, I was like, nah, I'm not going to tell anyone. It's not one of those games that should be spoiled. Yeah, play it, and it's kind of even spoiled by me saying that it's a comic game, right? Because it was released under the guise of being an educational game. And you learn all about fractions with frogs, and like every part of it is just fantastic. So we learn about life. So as a reiteration of a definition of thesis is that comic games are those whose primary and prolonged purpose are to evoke laughter. They are not games that contain humor, they are humor, and that is their aim. There is an authorial intent here. It's not just subjective, but it kind of also is. So, do you have any questions? Please only in English, because I don't speak French. And here's all my stuff. Oh man, this is a lie. The funny games chart is a lie. That's not a real one. This one is. There's a huge paper that I wrote, and it's got like all these quotes in it and works cited and everything. If you ever want to read it, it's here. And there's a link to a nice spreadsheet in this paper. This is a false link. It's a red herring, is what we call it in the biz. All right, so yeah, questions or comments or anything. I'm gonna walk around. I'm gonna have these mag books. Yeah, I'm gonna have banana also. This is my product. I brought this from New Jersey. It's a New Jersey banana. All right, anyone? Question, comment, complaint? Oh, let me go around. Wait, nice. Lunchbox, right? Computer box, lunch, Omaha?
Yes, yes.
Cool, cool, nice.
Quick question. You didn't include Stanley Parable. Any reason for that, or?
No, no reason for that. I think Stanley Parable is a satirical game and is definitely a comic game. Yeah, it very adeptly satirizes first-person exploration games and narrative games.
Cool.
Stanley Parable. Let's have it for Stanley Parable. All right. Yeah, real good. Who said real good? What's your name? Matthew. Real good. Stanley Parable. Here we go.
All right, I hope this isn't like too deep a question, but I was thinking as you were talking, I love old comedies, and they always say the essence of comedy is timing, and you can tell a funny joke in a bad way, and then it's not funny anymore. How does that relate to a game? Because sometimes the comedy is not just what's being said, it's how it's said. You know, like that old no soap radio thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. How does that relate to games? I'd say in some categories of comic games, the timing is as important as it is in regular comedy, stand-up comedy, or any comedy in general. So for example, Octodad has a lot of cutscenes in it. And those come at times where you're probably slightly frustrated. As funny as the game is, you're probably frustrated as a player flailing around this house trying to do mundane tasks like climb up a stepladder, right? And so that timing is extremely important in a game like Octodad where they need a joke that they don't have to work for. So here is a sushi chef that's going to bust down your fence and yell at you because he knows that you're an octopus, but no one else does. So yeah, that's awesome. Timing as an important part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's the point. Hey.
I'm sorry.
I got your point coming back.
I wasn't here for the first part. I apologize. So, 2 questions. So, did you discuss games like Portal and Borderlands that have like humorous dialogue? And number 2, if you did, do you feel like the future is more like games like that have more like humorous dialogue, or do you feel it's more like games that have humorous like gameplay, like the ones you discussed, like Octodad and things of that nature?
Cool. So I touched
Portal
upon
2 in particular, which was funny as hell, by the way.
Yeah. I mentioned Portal, and I think Portal and Borderlands would fall, funny enough, in similar, nicely, neatly constructed boxes in that they are games that contain a lot of humor, right? I wouldn't define them as comic games. I think Portal is a puzzle game, and it is a first-person puzzle game, and it is really funny and sometimes darkly humorous. Like it's great.
Portal 2 though with Stephen Merchant was God. It was so funny, man.
Yeah. That's a lot of really funny writing and a lot of funny dialogue. There's not much funny in trying to get out of a room. That a sentry is going to like riddle you with bullets if you don't.
Yeah.
Right, and of course it's not like you're fearing for your life because you're gonna die. But at the same time, I don't think the intent of that game was to make the player laugh at doing things. As for the future of games, I've seen the future. The future is now. There is a space for all these games.
Gotcha.
There is a space for. There will always be humor in video games. There will always be funny games because that is okay, I don't want to, I'm going to word it this way, but I'm okay to argue about it. I think comedy is a cheap way to sell video games. I think if you put comedy in a game, I think you can do comedy really well, and that makes a game like better and heightened for that, but I think it is an easy way to be like, play my game, it's funny. You know, like the Borderlands, I love Borderlands. I played a lot of Borderlands. I played a lot of Borderlands 2. The entire sales pitch for Borderlands 2 was like a bazillionaire guns, I think, something like that, where it was just like, play our game, it's funny. And yeah, those are great. But so is Octodad, and so is Quap, and so is Stanley Parable. And I think all of these things can exist. You know, we can have those things, we can have Depression Quest, we can have anything we want. By the way, Depression Quest I mentioned because Zoe Quinn gave this talk in 2015. I learned about it this morning. We use a lot of the same examples. Hopefully great minds think alike. I don't know. I should tweet her. Here we go. Anyone else? Question, comment, point? Oh. Okay, I thought your hat was a hand. It's 12:30. I'm just going to go in spatial order. Did you have this? White Girl Wasted? Oh, favorite comedy games. Shit. Oh, man. Here, let me think about that when I take another question. I'm going to keep procrastinating this. I hate favorites. There's so many good things.
So a big part of your definition hinged a lot on authorial intent. Yeah. Do you think that then there couldn't be a the room of games where the intent was so far away from the actual result?
Yeah. So yeah, the room is. Does everyone know the room? More percentage than who knows frog fractions? Okay, great, good. The, do those like retroactively fall into comic games? Can you think of one?
I can.
Bubsy. Bubsy 2.
There's a weird biker game, like Road to Hell Retribution. Everyone loved that shit.
Oh, yes, Paranormal Activity? Deadly Premonition. That's exactly right. Oh, jeez. I'm gonna say I would not categorize them as comic games at first. I think there is movement, right? There's possible movement for these things, and we can move from box to box. We can share boxes. We can be in several. So yeah, if over time something becomes culturally hilarious or comedic, I would say secondary. I would be like, yeah, secondary, that's a comic game. But first, I think authorial intent is important because we're talking about like The Room. Is The Room categorized as a comedy now?
I think he now recognized it as a dark comedy, but the whole like original intent was to be like the new Tennessee Williams.
Right. With what does he say? He has the force of Tennessee Williams,
Yeah.
something stupid like that. That's not a comedy. I think that. Yeah, exactly. I think that movie. No, that's not a comedy movie. It's just like depressingly funny. Yeah, it's really bad. It's a good question though. No problem.
There's an unintentional comedy panel tomorrow at 9:30.
I know. I signed up for it. I have like a 15-minute warning for it, so I'll definitely be there.
So I wanted to make I don't really have a question. I just wanted to make an addition, like an additional comment about timing. Timing being a critical factor in a lot of comedy. In games, it's hard to assure that things are going to happen with the timing that you expect them to happen because players have agency and different players will do different things. So you can't really set up a joke with one character saying a thing and then resolve the joke with another character saying a thing because they might spend 45 minutes wandering off in a side room collecting treasure first. Just as an example. That's why he mentioned cutscenes in Octodad. It's way easier to tell a joke in a cutscene than it is through gameplay. Unless it's like some kind of emergent systems-based gameplay, in which case it's really hard to set up intentionally funny gameplay in the first place. Unless you've got a really good premise, like Octodad or Quap.
I like that. That's great. Thank you. Here's the point. Agency.
So I was wondering, which genres do you think best lend themselves to comedy in video gaming?
Oh man, which genre? Which like other genre? I think they're all rife for parody. I think you can. Let's see. We talked about interactive fiction. We talked about platformers, 3D platformers. What do I think is most ready to be? I think 3D platformers. I'm gonna go on a limb and say 3D platformers because there's so much ridiculous stuff there that like somehow became the norm. Like all the collectibles and 3D platformers that are just mind-numbingly asinine, that players are just like, yeah, I gotta collect the 17 Jagos in this world, this subworld, or else. Like that's hilarious. That we as players are like, yeah. Let's go, 100%. I need this. So I'm going to go with that. What do you think?
Yeah. I think generally adventure games often work pretty well because there's always like, combine these inventory items or do the ridiculous action on the thing. And so there's a lot of, player does something, just try something ridiculous and you get a funny reaction sometimes.
I think I like that too. Yeah, adventure games. And sorry, Tim Schafer fans. I think Tim Schafer and Double Fine, I think they make adventure games. they're really funny and they're written well, and there's a lot of comedy in them. That's one of those thin line things that people really want to fight with me about. That and Duke Nukem are my biggest fights. I got to give you a point, and then I'll go over here. Actually, we'll do it in reverse order. I'm listening.
What do you think about games like Super Mario Brothers 2 Japan or I Want to Be the Guy? Because for me, those are really, it's when you jump and you go try to jump over the pit and then there's the invisible coin block and you fall and die. That's pretty funny. Like a Kaizo Mario kind of thing where it's playing with your expectations, it's trying to trick you, surprise you.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the developer or developers being like, all right, let's get them.
Yeah.
That's a good joke in 2D platformer game.
Yeah.
The apple kills you. You walk under it and then go back, then walk under it again, the second apple kills you. You try to jump over it, the apple flies up. You can't.
You can't win. I'm gonna go over this way. Did you have a question? Or comment or complaint? All welcome. I like the joystick thing.
Just wanted to ask if any of your research extended into board games or anything outside of video games.
I tried to focus on video games just to give myself some constraints. Otherwise, it would unravel very quickly. I mean, you can see by watching me talk for 40 minutes that sometimes it's just like, all right, let's go this way. And I wanted to keep my scope narrow. Board games. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I imagine even Clank. Clank is great, but that's kind of a... No, there's a board game called Clank where it's a dungeon crawler, but you're like trying to get artifacts, but once one person leaves, the game is on a timer and everyone else dies unless they leave immediately. And it's like, there's a lot of clear jokes that parody other board game mechanics. Did you want an endpoint?
No, I was just curious.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Munchkin is like, yeah, sure. That riffs off D&D, right? I think Munchkin is also oh, this is 2? This might be dangerous. I think Munchkin is primarily D&D light. So let's go here, new question, and then I think that's probably going to do it for us, folks. Here we go.
There's a microphone. Yeah. I was wondering if you had played Snipperclips on Switch.
Snipperclips is great.
Yeah, I felt like while you focused on a lot of single-player games that were funny, yeah. I found that playing me and my wife, so much humor came from just the interaction of co-op going on in a game like that. I felt like never really came across in other games.
That's good. Yeah, I like Snipperclips. I would say Snipperclips is primarily puzzle, and you are working with someone towards completing a puzzling objective. What I talk about in the paper, which is super long and you don't want to read the whole thing, is in a game like Littlebigplanet, there's this mechanic in Littlebigplanet where you can do facial reactions. So you can have your character be like, and this is primarily the way to talk to other players online in a multiplayer match. And they're all humorous, and they're all over-the-top, dramatic. And I think Snipperclips, I think a lot of the joy or the comedy that, I'm guessing, I don't know what you found funny about it, but I think a lot of it was you take a chunk out of your partner and they're like...
The characters react.
Yes, yeah, like their reactions I think were very smartly designed to be funny.
Yeah, they definitely reacted, they felt like they reacted to what you reacted to.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I'm going to go with puzzle. Funny game. Joyous. But I think you get... I think once you play with other players, there's so much that's outside of the game that's leading to your enjoyment that I wouldn't say that the developers... Oh, actually the developers did intend that because they made it a local co-op game, right? Like, great. All right, and that is 1:30. Favorite comedy game? Okay, here's one that every single time I laugh at, and Room of 1,000 Snakes. So if you've never heard of it, that's perfect. Go play just type in Room of 1,000 Snakes, and the only thing I would say is you need to listen to it. You need either headphones or to be in an environment where you can hear it. Yep, that's it. Thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate it.